a soft, endless quiet that hums beneath the breath of wind. You find yourself standing at the edge of the world, or what feels like it. The land ahead is not land in the way you've known it. It is motion and stillness all at once, a golden sea, frozen mid-wave. This is the Sahara, the largest hot desert on Earth. A place where time doesn't tick, it sifts. You feel it between your fingers, fine as flour, ancient as bone dust. Your footsteps make no sound here. The dunes rise and fall like sleeping giants, curled under the sun. You walk slowly, every movement softened by the give of sand. Above, the sky is merciless in its brightness, but somehow still beautiful, like silence made visible. And yet, there's something else in this quiet. A weight. A memory. A breath still held. Because beneath the silence, the Sahara remembers. You kneel, place your hand on the warm earth. Grains of sand slip through your fingers like forgotten stories. But stories don't disappear. They just change form. Once, rivers curled through this land like silver threads. Once, trees cast shadows where now there is only glare. You're not just walking on sand. You're walking on the ruins of rain. Somewhere deep below your feet lie fossilized fish, ancient pollen, clay pots from long-gone villages. Proof that this place once held water, not in the air as a dream, but in the soil, in the roots, in the breath of the living. They call this desert lifeless. But life here simply moves differently. The beetle that drinks from morning fog. The date palm that clings to lonely oases like a whispered still here. Even the wind has purpose, it carves and sculpts, never resting, never still. And then, there's you. Wandering through this vastness with a question burning quietly in your chest. Could it be green again? You pause and listen. Not with your ears, but with your body. The air shimmers. The sand breathes. And in that breath, you sense potential. Because what is a desert, really? An absence? Or an invitation? You close your eyes and imagine. A single tree, reaching up like a green exclamation point. Then two. Then hundreds. Leaves catching light. Shadows stretching. Birds returning. But before we ask how, we must understand why. Why did it change? Why did the forest fade and the sand take its place? The answer isn't simple, like most truths whispered by time. Earth's climate, like its oceans, pulses and shifts. Tectonic plates drift, tilt, breathe heat from within. Air currents meander, carrying storms or swallowing them whole. A small wobble in the planet's orbit, a fraction of a tilt. And rain forgets to fall for 1,000 years. This isn't just history. It's a reminder that landscapes are not static, they listen to the sky, to the sea, to us. The Sahara, in its vast silence, holds the blueprint of change. Not just of how deserts are born, but how they might be reborn. You keep walking. The heat rises in waves. There's a rhythm to this place, even in its emptiness. A kind of music you feel in your bones. You picture a forest here, not as decoration, but as medicine. For the earth. For the air. For the soul. Because planting a forest is not just about trees. It's about water. And before there is green, there must be rain. You stop on a dune's crest, letting your eyes wander across the endless gold. The thought returns. That somewhere beneath this sand, rivers are sleeping. Waiting for something. Maybe for you. The wind picks up. It tugs at your clothes, carries grains of sand like sparks. Not violent, just persistent. Like an idea that won't leave you alone. Could the clouds be coaxed to return? Could the sky be convinced to weep once more? The sun lowers, and shadows begin to stretch across the dunes. You feel the hush of twilight settling in, like a curtain gently falling. This is the desert's quiet promise. That beneath what seems barren lies everything you need to begin again. And so, your next step is not on sand, but into the sky. into vapor and wind, into the science of summoning clouds, and teaching the desert to drink once more. You lie back on a dune as night stretches across the sky like deep velvet. The wind hushes. The stars emerge, old and steady. Here, in this dark stillness, your mind begins to travel, not forward, but back. Back to a time when the desert wasn't a desert at all. Close your eyes and let the sand beneath you melt into soil. Let the air cool. Let the silence become birdsong. Can you hear it? The murmur of a stream curling between tall grasses. The wet slap of a hippo's tail. The hum of insects. The rustle of trees. This is not imagination. This is memory, Earth's memory. Locked in fossils, in buried bones, in grains of pollen too small to see but strong enough to tell the truth. Roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, the Sahara was green. So green that lakes the size of countries stretched across its belly. So alive that giraffes walked alongside early humans. So vibrant that even crocodiles made their homes in what is now parched, cracked land. Scientists call this the African humid period. But here, tonight, in the quiet of your mind, you call it the time of the forest. How do we know it existed? Because the land speaks. Even when it sleeps beneath miles of sand. Satellite scans have traced the ghost paths of ancient rivers. Archaeologists have unearthed cave paintings of boats, fish, cattle, and dancing figures. All painted on rocks now surrounded by emptiness. The Sahara wasn't always harsh. It once cradled life, thick, blooming, wild. And then, it stopped. The rain slowed. The trees withered. The lakes shrank, and the animals moved on. What changed? You imagined the earth shifting slightly. Not violently, but subtly, like a sleeper rolling in bed. Our planet tilts on its axis. Just a degree or two over thousands of years. And the monsoon rains shift their path. No more water. No more green. Deserts aren't born in fire. They are born in silence, in absence. They arrive slowly, like sleep. Some scientists believe humans helped accelerate this drying. Early farmers clearing forests for grazing. Soil left exposed to wind and sun. Tiny choices, compounded over generations, rewriting entire climates. It's a humbling thought. That both forests and deserts can grow from us. From our presence, and from our forgetting. But memory is a seed. And tonight, you hold it in your palm. If the Sahara was green once, can it be green again? It's not a dream anymore. It's a memory waiting to be remembered. You picture a forest waking up from centuries of slumber. Roots finding their way back to familiar soil. Rain remembering where to fall. Birds returning to long-lost flight paths. It won't happen all at once. Nature doesn't rush. But it does return, slowly, faithfully. If you give it a reason. You breathe deeply. The air is dry, but not lifeless. It carries echoes. You feel them settling around you like a soft blanket. The knowledge that this place was once full of life. That the silence is not emptiness, it's potential. And as the stars pulse gently overhead, you feel the past pressing against the present. Not to stay, but to point the way forward. Because to green a desert, you must first believe that it remembers how to bloom. And so, before you plant trees, you must plant water. The journey begins with clouds. You wake with the sky above you, a vast, pale, and stubbornly dry. It's morning in the desert. The sun has not yet burned its mark across the day. And for a moment, there's softness in the air. A breath of cool before the heat takes hold. You rise and scan the horizon. Searching the skies not for shade, but for the shimmer of possibility. A wisp, a vapor, a curl of cloud. Because to bring life back to this land, you first need the sky to weep. But how do you ask a desert sky for rain? You start by listening. Not just to nature, but to science. to the quiet minds who've studied the clouds, measured their weight, mapped their moods. Clouds, you learn, are born from a delicate marriage of heat, air, and dust. When warm air rises, it carries moisture skyward. As it cools, the water vapor condenses into droplets, clinging to tiny particles. Salt, soot, even sand. This process, called nucleation, is how clouds form. And, sometimes, how they break open in rain. But in the desert, the moisture is often too little. The sky stretches thin. The air holds its tears. So scientists began to wonder. Could we nudge the clouds to let go? This is the art of cloud seeding. Picture this. A small aircraft soars through the sky, dispersing fine particles, silver iodide, most often, into the waiting clouds. These particles act like scaffolding, helping water molecules gather, join hands, become heavier, until gravity calls them down as rain. It sounds like alchemy, but it's real. And in some places, it's already in use. In the United Arab Emirates, in parts of China, even in drought-prone corners of the United States. You imagine the sky above the Sahara streaked with flight paths, each one a quiet invitation to rain. But it's not only the clouds that can be coaxed. The land itself can play its part. You envision great solar updraft towers rising from the desert floor, tall chimneys warmed by the sun, pulling hot air upward with gentle force. As the air ascends, it cools and may help seed clouds above. Even mirrors, arranged across miles of sand, could reflect light upward to influence atmospheric currents. A symphony of science and sunlight. But none of this is simple. Weather is not a machine. It is mood, movement, memory. Push too hard, and the clouds may resist. Pull too softly, and they won't come at all. And so the dance continues. A delicate choreography between earth and air. But you wonder, if we do bring the rains, what then? Will the water soak into the thirsty soil? Or vanish, swallowed by heat before it touches ground? You think of rain not as an end, but a beginning. The first note in a long song of revival. Because rain alone is not enough. It must be held. It must be caught by roots, pooled in ponds, woven into the life of the land. Still, it must begin here. With this sky. With this question. Can we ask the heavens to help us heal the earth? You close your eyes and picture it. A cloud forming over the dunes. Heavy with promise. A single drop falls. Then another. Then a hush of rain, gentle as breath. The sand drinks quietly. No applause. Just absorption. Just acceptance. And in that moment, the desert does not bloom. But it listens. Because before there are forests, before there are roots and fruits and shade, there must be trust. The sky must trust the land to catch its tears. And we must learn how to ask. The rain has passed. It didn't last long, a whisper, a grace note. But the memory of moisture lingers in the air. The sand is cooler beneath your feet. Your steps no longer vanish in dry sighs. Something has changed. You kneel down, press your palm into the earth. It's still sand, still dry just beneath the surface. But it's listening now. Waiting. And you wonder, what kind of life could hear this invitation? You imagine roots, delicate as breath, pushing downward through the grit. Searching. Stretching. Trusting. But not all plants are made for this. The usual softness of a rainforest tree, it would wither here. The thirst of a tropical bloom, too demanding. No, this place requires specialists. You close your eyes and the desert begins to suggest names. Acacia. With thorns like patience and leaves like lace. Its roots reach as deep as 20 meters. Tapping hidden water no eye can see. It stands alone, regal and slow-growing, dropping seeds that sleep through drought and wake with rain. Date palms. Tall, ancient sentinels that know how to share. Their shade becomes a nursery, creating microclimates beneath their fronds, where other plants can hide from the sun. Moringa, Jatropha, Prosopis. Names like poetry. Each one adapted to thirst and heat. Each one a miracle of survival. You learn a new word, xerophyte. A plant that thrives where others falter. With waxy leaves that hug moisture tight. With spines instead of petals. With a rhythm slow to the pace of endurance. In a desert, nothing hurries. Growth is measured in size, not seasons. And every seed is a gamble. You imagine planting one. Just one. A small motion. A deep hope. You tuck it into the earth and cover it gently. Will it grow? You don't know. But nature does. And nature loves a patient hand. There's something sacred in choosing the right species. Not just for beauty, but for partnership. These plants don't just survive the desert. They change it. Their roots hold sand in place, preventing it from becoming wind again. Their shade cools the air by degrees. Their fallen leaves nourish the soil. They are not guests here, they become the architects. And when you plant many, in staggered layers, in thoughtful patterns, you begin to sculpt something called a canopy. A living shelter. Tall trees above. Shrubs and bushes below. Grasses in between. Each one feeding and shielding the next. It's not just a planting. It's a conversation. A forest is not a collection of trees. It is a community. You remember this now. As you picture June after June blooming with green, you no longer imagine single trees standing alone, but networks, friendships, ecologies. And what of the soil, you ask? Surely, sand cannot hold roots for long. But even that has an answer. With compost. With mulching. With mycorrhizal fungi. Tiny underground filaments that connect plants together. Sharing water and wisdom beneath the surface. You smile at the thought that even in silence, plants whisper to one another. So you rise, brush the sand from your hands, and look out across the still blinking desert. It seems impossible. But then again, so does every seed. And seeds, tiny as they are, carry forests in their bones. The seed is small, lighter than a breath, yet heavy with promise. You hold it gently between your fingers and wonder what's hidden inside. A forest? A revolution? In your mind, you travel into it. Past the husk, past the shell, into the spiral of its DNA. Here, life writes itself in code. Not zeros and ones, but A, T, C, and G. For letters, infinite combinations. The alphabet of biology. And you realize, this desert, so stubborn, so dry, could be rewritten from the inside out. Because science has learned how to edit life. To splice, switch, silence, and spark. To nudge a plant into remembering how to survive a place it's never known. You step into the world of genetic engineering. This isn't fiction. It's already happening. In labs across the world, scientists are designing seeds that thrive where nothing should. Rice that drinks brine. Wheat that doesn't wilt in heat. Corn that calls in its own insect allies. CRISPR, gene drives, synthetic genomes. The tools are sharp, precise, astonishing. And they whisper to you now. What if we crafted trees that love the desert? Trees with roots that don't fear salt. Leaves that sip dew like nectar. Bark that reflects sunlight. Genes borrowed from desert survivors. Cacti, mangroves, even bacteria. Fused with fast-growing forest species. You picture a Sahara seeded not with chance, but with design. A forest tailored to thirst. But then your breath slows. And your thoughts, once bright and racing, grow quieter. Because behind every edit, there is a question. Behind every engineered leaf, a mirror. What does it mean to change a species? To rewrite what took nature millennia to shape? Is it healing or hubris? Science is a scalpel. Sharp enough to save. Sharp enough to scar. And so you walk slowly through the landscape of your mind. Balancing all with humility. Yes, we can make a desert bloom faster than nature ever could. But at what cost? Will these new trees speak the same language as the insects that need them? Will they feed the same soil? Will they make space for life, or only for themselves? You recall the ripple effect. Change one gene, one species, one corner of an ecosystem. And watch the waves spread. The desert is not empty. It holds secrets. It holds balances too delicate to see. Still, you don't turn away from the science. You just hold it more carefully. Because the question is not can we design life. It's how we do it, and why. And perhaps the answer is partnership. Not domination. You picture scientists walking beside nomads. Biologists listening to desert farmers. Lab coats beside weathered hands. Together designing seeds that honor both tradition and tomorrow. You imagine new forests grown not just with genes, but with wisdom ancient and emerging. And as the sun dips low over the horizon, you return your attention to the seed in your hand. Still small. Still silent. But now, different. Because now you see it not just as a biological miracle, or a technological opportunity, but as a question. A question whispered into the earth. What kind of life do we wish to grow here? You lower the seed to the soil. Not to plant yet, but to listen. Because the next step isn't about designing the forest. It's about understanding the forest as a living system. A web. A breath. A network of subtle change. The forest hasn't grown yet. Not fully. Not loudly. But you feel it anyway. Like the faintest shift in the wind. A single tree stands now, its roots holding sand like quiet hands. A sapling, brave and trembling in the sun. It casts a tiny shadow. And in that shadow, the air is just a little cooler. The ground, just a little softer. The silence, just a little less alone. This is how microclimates are born. Not with thunder. Not with sweeping change. But with one soft whisper at a time. You sit beneath that tree and watch the air move. You notice something you hadn't before. The wind behaves differently here. It pauses. It listens. Because the shape of the land has changed ever so slightly. And the land, in turn, begins to shape the sky. You remember a simple truth. Climate is not just global. It is local. It is intimate. A patch of shade. A puddle that lingers 1 hour longer. A breeze redirected. These are not accidents. They are signals. A tree cools the air beneath it by several degrees. It slows wind. It catches fog. Its roots draw water upward. Its leaves exhale moisture and breathe in carbon. This tiny presence does what no machine can. It rewrites the rules of space. And when one tree becomes 10, then 50, then 1,000, you witness a cascade. More shade means cooler ground. Cooler ground means less evaporation. More water stays. More plants follow. More insects come. And with them, birds. And with them, life. It is the butterfly effect. Not as metaphor, but as truth. A flap of green on one side of the desert. And on the other, a garden begins to hum. You close your eyes and picture the transformation. Where once there were bare dunes, now patches of green dot the horizon. Each patch creating its own small weather. Each one a miniature climate that bends heat, holds water, softens wind. These are the lungs of the future forest. And forests, like lungs, grow best when they can breathe in rhythm. So you start to think in patterns. Where should each tree go? What shape should the rows take? What if you plant in spirals or clusters? To mimic how nature grows, uneven, intuitive, alive? There's an art to it. A science too. 1,000 experiments written into each choice. You remember a technique called agroforestry, where trees are planted among crops, helping one another survive. Or permaculture, which uses natural patterns to design ecosystems that feed themselves. And then there's windbreaks. Lines of tall trees that catch the breath of sandstorms, turning fury into hush. Each of these shapes a microclimate. Each is a small defiance against the vastness of heat and drought. But it's not about control. Not domination. It's collaboration. Like a song that listens while it plays. You begin to see the desert differently now. Not as a vast, unchanging plain, but as a canvas of potential rhythms. And you? You are not just a planter. You are a composer. You're not growing a forest. You're composing a system. A symphony. Where sunlight becomes percussion. Wind becomes breath. Roots become harmony. And life sings. And though the music is still faint, you hear it building. It begins in whispers. In patterns so small they feel invisible. But they are there. The way the air holds more weight beneath each tree. The way the sand shifts slower in their presence. The way silence begins to fill with sound. There is a hush in the trees. Stillness, but not the empty kind. The kind that holds a heartbeat just beneath it. You kneel near a sapling's roots, eyes closed, ears wide. And in the breath between wind and silence, you listen for life. But the forest is too new. Too young to be loud. So far, only plants have answered your call. But now, you begin to whisper to the animals. Not with words, but with water. With shelter. With slowness. Because life does not return all at once. It arrives in cautious steps. First come the ants, busy and silent. Then beetles, glinting under leaves. Then, one morning, a shimmer of wings. A butterfly, drawn by color, scent, heat. You smile softly. Because this is how it begins. Animals follow pathways. Not roads or signs. But signals, moisture in the air. A certain scent in the soil. The rustle of something green where there used to be nothing. They come not for the trees alone, but for the promise that the land is listening again. You remember that every forest is made of two halves. What grows from the ground? And what moves through it? And so, you begin to imagine the orchestra yet to arrive. Birds? Not just for beauty, but for balance. They eat the insects that nibble at young leaves. Spread seeds in their bellies. Sing morning into being. Bees and butterflies? Carrying pollen like golden prayers. From flower to flower. Without them, green becomes mute. Foxes. Jerboas. Desert cats. Creatures with fur dusted in moonlight. Tiptoeing through underbrush that didn't exist before. Each one is a note. Together, they create the hum of wholeness. But how do you invite them? You cannot force life to arrive. You can only build a place worth returning to. You begin small. You install water basins between the trees, shallow, shaded. You plant flowering bushes at the edges. Bright petals that speak in color, come closer. You leave old branches fallen. Let dead leaves pile. Because decay feeds everything. Slowly, subtly, the land becomes more than soil and stems. It becomes a map for return. You read about rewilding. A gentle process of letting nature reclaim space. Without overdesign. Without rushing. You're not building a zoo. You're building an invitation. And it must come with safety. You protect the forest edge from heavy machines. You fence only what must be fenced. You keep the light low at night. You remember, wild things fear too much noise. Too much control. And just when you wonder if the call has been too quiet, a shadow flutters across the ground. You look up. A bird. Small, dark, sharp-eyed. It lands on a branch no more than a year old. Tilts its head. And sings. Only once. But it's enough. You breathe slowly, hand still in your lap. Because you know. Once one creature comes, others will follow. The air begins to hold more movement. Not busy, but alive. Every insect is a pollinator. Every bird a guardian. Every creature part of the great rhythm you've only just begun to hear. But more than that, they are proof. Proof that the land has remembered what it means to be generous. To host. To share. And in return, the creatures bring balance. They keep pests in check. They enrich the soil with droppings. They carry seeds farther than your hands ever could. You realize something then. This forest is not yours. It belongs to those who find their way back to it. And your role? You are not the master. You are the chorus of welcome. The soft voice that says, it's safe to return now. And in doing so, you do not just heal the land. You heal yourself. Because something stirs in you when the world begins to sing again. The forest is not yet thick. But it breathes. You walk its young paths. Passing under threadbare shade and soft earth, still learning how to hold moisture. The air smells different now. A little cooler, a little damp. And yet, beneath this bloom of hope, a question grows. Not about what can be done, but what it costs to do it. You pause beside a sapling. Its leaves trembling in the breeze. You run your hand along its thin trunk. And feel more than bark. You feel energy. Resources. Sacrifice. Because to make a desert bloom, you need more than seeds and sunshine. You need water. The most precious thread of life on this planet. And here, in the Sahara, water does not come easily. So you begin to imagine the infrastructure. Pipelines stretching for miles. Pulling water from coastal desalination plants. Or from distant rivers, if they still flow. Machines that sip saltwater and spit out drinkable drops. Powered by solar fields the size of cities. Each drop of water a miracle. And a burden. Because desalination is not simple. It's energy intensive. It creates brine, saltier than the sea. Which must go somewhere. You picture the salty sludge. Flowing back into oceans. Disrupting marine life. A trade, fresh water for trees. Salt for coral. You frown. The equation is not so clean. Then there's the money. Not metaphorical, real. Forests need funding. Irrigation systems. Maintenance crews. Monitoring stations. Years of labor before a single tree casts meaningful shade. You think of the people who live near these lands. Communities who may not have enough clean water to drink, yet are asked to support trees that drink by the gallon. Whose forests are these, really? Who benefits? Who bears the cost? There's no easy answer. Only a widening spiral of responsibility. Some say it's worth it. That the carbon captured, the soil restored, the heat reduced, all repay the price tenfold. And perhaps they do. But numbers can't always see suffering. Or fairness. You picture a village with dry wells, a field of young trees thriving beside it. Would you call it success? Even green, when planted without care, can become a wound. And so you return to the root of the question. What does it mean to help a place? To fix it? Is it help if it isn't asked for? Is it healing if it ignores the people who live among the dunes? You realize the desert is not broken. It is not in need of saving. It is simply itself. Beautiful. Harsh. Ancient. The forest must fit into it. Not over it. Not against it. And that means design must follow humility. Must involve local voices. Nomads. Farmers. Elders. Not just scientists with satellite maps. You start to think not in terms of conquest, but of care. What if greening the desert didn't mean reshaping it entirely, but softening its edges? Adding oases. Restoring lost lakes. Greening only where the land wants to be green. A patchwork, not a blanket. A symphony with pauses. With silence. Because deserts, too, are ecosystems. And not all sand longs to be soil. You walk to the edge of the young forest, where trees thin out and dunes begin again. You sit and watch the two worlds touch. It is not a war zone. It is a meeting place. And here you feel it. That balance is not about making everything green. It's about listening to where green is welcome. You exhale slowly. Yes, the cost is great. In energy. In time. In care. But the greatest cost is forgetfulness. When we forget to ask, does the earth want what we want? You look at the trees behind you. And the dunes ahead. And for the first time, you stop imagining the desert's end. You start imagining its coexistence. And just when you think this dream is only yours, you remember. Some have already begun. Across Africa, a green wall rises, not in fantasy, but in soil. And it's time to walk that wall. The morning sun casts long, golden shadows. But this time, you are not alone. You walk alongside others. Feet dusted in red earth. Hands stained with soil and hope. There is laughter nearby. The soft murmur of instructions passed from old to young. The rhythm of water buckets swinging. The hush of a sapling pressed gently into ground. You have arrived in the heart of something real. No longer an idea. No longer a whisper in the dunes. This is the Great Green Wall. Stretching like a slow breath across the waste of Africa. From the western shores of Senegal to the eastern edge of Djibouti. An 8,000-kilometer vision. Not a wall of stone, but of trees, of shrubs, of roots, and more than that, of people. You hadn't imagined this at first. You saw the forest as a future. But here, it is present. It lives in every hand that cradles a seedling. In every farmer reclaiming a patch of cracked land. In every child who learns that soil can sing again. You speak to a woman in Mali who plants trees between her millet rows. She smiles as she explains farmer-managed natural regeneration. A method not of planting new trees, but of protecting the ones already waiting underground. Hidden roots, ancient and persistent. Given one more chance to rise. And they do rise. Faster than you'd believed. Stronger than you'd hoped. You learn that some parts of the wall are thriving. In Niger, over 200 million trees have returned. Not by bulldozers, but by barefoot effort and careful tending. You see it? Green mixing with gold. Shade falling on once barren land. Fields cooler, soil richer, spirits lifted. But the wall is not even. Some parts falter. Money thins. Projects stall. War displaces workers. Climate quickens its pace. Still, people keep planting. Because this wall is not built by governments alone. It's built by resolve. You meet a boy in Chad who waters trees with his own hands at dawn. He doesn't speak of climate change. He just says, "We need shade for the goats." Simple. True. The wall begins with need and continues with care. You begin to understand that the wall is not just one long forest. It's a mosaic. A necklace of green beads stitched across villages. Each with its own story, its own struggle, its own rhythm. In some places, it's rows of drought-tolerant trees. In others, vegetable gardens under solar irrigation. Elsewhere, it's windbreaks or re-wildered savannas. There is no single blueprint. Only shared intention. And here, in the dust and effort, you see something you hadn't expected. Joy? Not just the joy of trees, but of doing something that matters. Something rooted. Something that will last. Because when a seed becomes a tree, and a tree becomes a grove, and a grove becomes a home for birds, you've rewritten a future. Not only for the land, but for the people who depend on it. You begin to see the Great Green Wall not as a line, but as a pulse, beating slowly through the center of a continent. It is not perfect. It is not finished. But it lives. And it teaches you this: that dreaming alone is gentle. But dreaming together is powerful. Because in every handful of planted earth, there is more than soil. There is dignity. There is restoration. There is belonging. And as you walk with the others, old women, young boys, tired hands, and steady hearts, you realize that this is not a story about trees. It is a story about return.
You lie beneath a tree. Its leaves shiver with wind. Its branches hold birdsong. And the soil beneath your back feels full. This is not the place you first arrived in. Nor are you the same person. The desert, the great expanse that once swallowed sound and sky, now pulses with life. Still quiet, yes, but not empty. And for the first time, you wonder not how you changed the land, but how the land has changed you. You close your eyes and listen. There's the rustle of shrubs, the chatter of insects, the slow drip of a leaf cupping rain, and somewhere farther off, children laughing, their footsteps weaving through saplings like water finds roots. You think of how long this took. Years, decades maybe, not just to grow, but to become. Because greening a desert is not about speed. It's about listening long enough that the land starts to dream again. And maybe so do you. You remember your first thoughts. Big ones. Bold ones. You wanted transformation. You pictured satellites capturing time-lapse forests blooming like moss on stone. You imagined headlines. Desert reclaimed. Forests where there was none. But lying here now, in the hush of a living thing, you realize the transformation wasn't only out there. It happened inside you too. Your breath slowed. Your mind softened. Your hands grew used to dirt. You learned to measure time in leaves, to think in seasons, to hope without hurry. And now the question rises, not what more to plant, but how to stay planted. Because the forest doesn't just ask for water and care. It asks for presence. It asks for belonging. And you wonder what it means for humans and forests to grow up together. You remember what the trees gave: oxygen, shade, food, shelter, beauty. But they gave more than that. They gave rhythm, a sense of days, of cycles, of patience, and maybe they gave forgiveness for all the harm we've done to soil, to sky. The trees didn't ask you to be perfect. They just asked you to return, and return you did, again and again, with each planting, with each whisper of, let's try again. You've seen what happens when nature and intention hold hands, when science partners with humility, when hope is rooted, not imagined. The desert didn't disappear. It changed shape. It softened. And so did you. 'Cause now you understand. Deserts are not lifeless. They are waiting. And forests are not saviors. They are invitations. The land does not ask to be fixed. It asks to be known. And once you know it, truly, you begin to know yourself. You've come to understand that planting trees is not a task. It's a relationship. And like all relationships, it requires listening, tending, letting go of control. You smile. The wind passes gently through the trees. Not pushing, just brushing. Just reminding you it's here. You rise slowly, brush the soil from your hands, and walk through a path of young trees that now sway taller than your shoulders. Birds flit overhead. The sun dapples between branches. You are walking not in a project, but in a promise kept. And somewhere in your chest, you feel something bloom too. A deeper quiet, a longer breath, a sense that this is not the end of a dream, but the beginning of belonging. Because when the desert dreams back, it doesn't return the world you gave it. It returns something better, something alive, something whole. And so beneath this forest sky you rest. You have planted life where there was silence. And in return the earth has planted something inside you. Let it grow. Let it rest. Let it be. Seedling. There will come a day when you step away from this land, not in rejection, but in trust. You've walked the forest paths for years, watched saplings grow sturdy, seen birds nest in branches that once fit in your palm. Now the forest no longer needs your hand. It stands. It sings. It remembers how to be wild again. But as you walk away, something follows you. Not the scent of soil, not the warmth of sun on bark. Something quieter, something rooted deeper than your feet. It is the forest in your mind. Because when you plant a tree, you plant a pattern. And patterns, when repeated, shape not just land, but thought. You begin to wonder, what else have you been reforesting? You think about how your breath has slowed over the years, how you've come to expect silence and cherish it, how you've learned to wait for change instead of demanding it. These are not habits. They are roots. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, to adapt, to grow. Much like a desert becoming green, your mind has softened in response to what you fed it. Patience, presence, cycles, connection. Each moment in the forest rewired a little piece of your perception. Each repetition deepened a groove, until your inner world mirrored the one you had grown outside. Your thoughts, once dry and restless, now move like wind between trees. Slow, gentle, directionless, but not lost. You've learned to pause, to listen, to notice the small. This is not a metaphor. This is biology. Studies show that spending time with nature, even imagined nature, lowers cortisol, lowers heart rate, strengthens empathy, improves memory. So imagine what years of forest making have done to your nervous system. You no longer crave noise. You crave shade. You crave rhythm. You crave slowness. And that craving has changed what you find beautiful. You no longer admire speed. You admire stillness that has weight, depth that doesn't announce itself. You find poetry in the way a leaf tilts toward the sun. You feel joy when a new shoot breaks the surface. You've redefined what progress means. Not taller, not faster, not more, but deeper. Truer. Rooted. You realize the forest did not just give you oxygen, it gave you perspective. Now, when you walk into a city, you see its patterns differently. You notice its heat, its pace, its hunger. You begin to dream of weaving green between gray, of planting thoughts like seeds in conversations, of creating shade in places that only know glare. Because now, you know that deserts exist in many forms, not just of sand, but of loneliness, of burnout, of disconnection. And the forest you grew is now a lens, a guide for restoring more than land. Maybe that's the real legacy, not the trees, but the transformation they inspire. You understand now that restoration is a mindset, a way of being with the world. It starts with one seed, one choice, one breath, and then, without realizing, you've rewired yourself to care, to respond, to wait, to try again when things fail. You smile, because you've learned the secret of trees. Growth is quiet, and transformation begins invisible. So even if no one else sees what you've done, even if the forest is far behind you, you carry it still. In how you move, in how you listen, and how you stay. Because rewilding the world always starts by rewilding the self. And your mind, once a desert of distraction, is now a green breathing thing. A forest of thought, alive with care, alive with possibility. And so you rest once more beneath a forest that lives within. And even if the trees around you fade or shift or fall, the forest in your mind will always grow back.